Welcome to the Bleep Midlife Bulimia podcast with guest Dr. Christian Heim, consultant psychiatrist and psychotherapist. Hi everyone, I'm Lorianne. I am the host of Bleep Midlife Bulimia, and today I'm very pleased to have Dr. Heim on my show, and he is a consultant psychiatrist and a psychotherapist. Thank you so much for being here with us. Just please tell us a little bit about what you do and where you're from.
Lorianne, it's a real treasure for me to be here tonight because I'm beaming in from Australia, from a small place called the Sunshine Coast, which is on the east coast, just north of Brisbane. And yes, as it sounds, the sun does tend to shine here a lot. So as you introduced, I'm a consultant psychiatrist. And most of my work is talking therapies. So psychotherapy specifically in severe personal trauma. But before that, I was head of an eating disorders unit, just an acting head for a short amount of time, but I treasure that time. And before I became a doctor, I was a lecturer in music and a composer, a piano player. And yeah, so I have a few strings there to my piano.
That's beautiful. I really do believe that music does help with the mindset. Personally, I've just really enjoyed it. I played flute for quite a few years, as we discussed. So just tell us a little bit about your experience in that with the eating disorders and being head of the unit.
Okay, so this was an inpatient unit at a large metropolitan hospital, and it was for acute cases, people who needed to be in hospital, mainly because at that point in their lives depended on that. And as you know, eating disorders is one of those areas in psychiatry that we could be doing a little better. We could understand a bit more. But at the pointy end, so in other words, when somebody is in hospital and their life is at risk, then it's actually just the right thing to do to take a medical approach, because you're looking to keep people alive. You're looking to make sure that their potassium levels, their hydration levels, and all those things are actually intact. However, behind all of that, and behind even their diagnosis, which we call an eating disorder, lies, of course, a person and a personal life journey. And one of the things that I learned is that everybody's life journey is so very different. So when it comes to psychiatry, we actually don't treat people that have the same diagnosis all the same, because you engage with them as people and you get to know their individual journeys. And so each treatment is tailored to each person.
So I know that you were saying they were primarily anorexics, which we're well aware of. In your time there, were there, and just because the show is about bulimia, but I was curious, did you come across bulimics as well? Was there a difference in attitude? I know that that's going to be hard because everybody is so different, but did you feel?
Yes, but there is a difference. There is a huge difference between somebody who primarily has a diagnosis of anorexia and somebody who has a diagnosis of bulimia. In fact, it's rare that somebody with a diagnosis purely of bulimia will end up in a hospital because of a life-threatening situation. That's what happens with anorexia. Anorexia, as you know, is one of our most devastating illnesses. In fact, it carries the highest mortality rate of anything in psychiatry, 25%, which is very worrying. And bulimia, thank goodness, doesn't carry that mortality rate. And people suffering from bulimia are, generally speaking, more integrated as people. Now, what I mean by that is they can be functioning in society. They can be teachers, they can be students, they can be psychiatrists, they can be actors, they can be gymnasts, and there's a whole lot of other risk factors for bulimia, but you don't see by looking at a person that they have bulimia. And that's an advantage for the person because they don't have to walk around with their diagnosis, right? The disadvantage is that it often remains a secret for many, many years because, because of the shame associated with it, but because it does something different for every person. Every person who is suffering from bulimia will have a different attitude to how secretive they are about their bulimia.
Absolutely. I have an interesting, some of my clients that we talk about, hard to let go of bulimia because it is something that they go to for comfort. And they even say that the high of the binge and even the
Yes,
low, even they say even the tiredness and the low side of it is almost something that they look forward to too. It's almost a forced rest, I guess it would be, type of thing.
yes, yes.
How would you perceive that?
Well, actually, Lorianne, just the words that you were using right there give a clue to how important bulimia actually is in somebody's life, okay? So you talked about it being a comfort, okay? And then you talked about how it was a rest, okay? And there was even the sense that going through that cycle, the binge cycle, and then a purge cycle, and then a fatigue after it, there's almost a sense of it being cathartic. So in that, bulimia serves a purpose. And it's not as though somebody just walks down the street and one day, bam, they're struck down by bulimia, right? It's not a random illness. It serves a purpose. And so one of the keys, I believe, to overcoming it is to become really honest and sort of say, okay, I have this. What good is it doing me? Because it's actually doing a lot of good, all right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have it, okay? And it's not as though you can be honest with everybody that you meet as to what it's actually doing. But at the very least, I'd encourage people to be honest with themselves, and that's not always easy. And if you have a therapist, a psychologist or a psychiatrist that you work with, to ensure that that is a confiding, trusting relationship, so you can be as honest as you can be with that person, because it's an amazing experience when you journey with somebody. And I mean, as a person suffering from bulimia, you actually journey with your psychiatrist or psychologist to make discoveries. And that becomes a vital experience. And when the experience of those discoveries and the hope of a future without bulimia becomes more pleasurable and more useful than the bulimia, that's when you start to say, maybe I could let go of this. Maybe I don't need this in my life.
I just love that. That's wonderful. As you know, I was bulimic. I was for 30 years,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I've recovered for 10. It's so
Yeah.
enlightening to be without it. It's so wonderful. And, for those who are struggling and are hoping to get out of it, I do hope, I love what you're saying too, is find that purpose. Because I even went to a psychiatrist who said exactly that. He says, at this point in your life, it's probably saving your life because you might have
Yes.
gone to something else. And I looked at it and I went, but I want to recover. I don't want you telling me that.
That's
Right.
right.
But he was getting to that point that don't shame yourself. And that's a big thing, getting over the shame.
Yes.
And as you were saying, just quickly with my side of it, I coach, but I'm also a master certified handwriting analyst, graphic therapist. What's fun about that is in handwriting, it's subconscious. So I can see things
Yes.
that even my clients won't see that could
Yes.
possibly move towards what might be causing this and what is your purpose that would be best served versus food. So
Yes. Yes. Now, I just want to pick up on one point that you made there. You talked about the enlightenment of having recovered from bulimia, and you've been living that enlightenment for 10 years, okay? Now, that is wonderful because this becomes the carrot, all right? What, you mean my life will be better without this? Yes. You mean my life will be safer without this? Yes. You mean I'll feel better about myself without this? Yes. Okay. So it's sort of like, good, onwards with the lessons, onward with the journey. Let me climb that mountain so I can get to that view. So that picture that you painted of enlightenment, that becomes a wonderful metaphor for what your listeners are looking for.
Absolutely. I want to speak a little bit to and get your opinion on this about there's again a couple of my clients who've gone on the journey of recovery for quite a few years, then they relapse, and then because of the relapse, they feel they will never be able to be non-bulimic. See, I believe that you can completely say, it's like, I've been single for 17 years, so I don't call myself divorced anymore. I earned my right to call myself single again. And like my 10 years of being bulimic free, I have the right to say I'm not bulimic and I'm never going to be again. And some people say never, but no, literally because of that enlightened feeling, no. So I used to be, but I'm no longer. So in that sense, so to that relapse, do you have any words to speak to that?
Right. Okay. So earlier on, I talked about the importance of being truthful with yourself. Okay. Now, when we talk about ourselves, we move from the objective to the subjective. So that means that each of our experiences are going to be different. Okay. And the things that you said about yourself. So I no longer see myself as divorced. I see myself as single. I don't see that I'm going to relapse again. I'm now non-bulimic, all right? They're all self-constructs. They're all ways that you see yourself, and they are very real, okay? Now, the thing is that it's difficult to then say, well, everybody should feel this way, okay? Because as you know, that doesn't work, all right? But to say this is something that you can reach for, okay? This may be part of your journey, and just open up. I often talk about opening up places in our mind for certain possibilities. And you see, there are some people who may not have a space in their mind that says, I could actually be free of this without relapsing again, okay? So we just open up that space, just open up that possibility without the guarantee of saying we're going to get there, because if we're inauthentic, we go, oh, I must do this. I must not relapse, okay? Whereas for some people, relapsing becomes part of their journey, just like sometimes tripping and just coming down the mountain a little bit is part of somebody's journey. It happens. The idea is, okay, I'm going to pick myself up again. I'm still going to walk towards that summit. So the idea is to keep walking and to have a sense that this is an authentic journey that I am really going on, and that there is something inside each of us that knows the way forward.
I just love that. And I do agree with that as well. And somebody once said that it's not that you're not heading for recovery, exactly what you said, you trip, but the other thing too is that you need that in that particular moment, so there's no shame to it. But don't feel that it's an end, because I think that's what some people who relapse, they feel that, okay, this is it. It's recovery is not achievable, and they lose that that enthusiasm of, yes, I can get through it. So, but you're right, open up that window, allow yourself those moments of relapse, and it's not as frightening anymore, and the restrictions and all of that come with it.
It's all the shoulds, okay? And it even gets to the stage where if somebody relapses and they feel shameful about that, well, in that moment, they feel shameful about that, okay? But we open up a space in the mind to sort of say, okay, there will come a time when you don't feel shameful, okay? And the shame will be part of your past, and we will keep seeing what your future has to offer. Because it's always that carrot. There is something better in the future. With that enlightenment that you were talking about, that there can be more pleasure to be without the bulimia than there is to be with the bulimia. And let's face it, there's comfort and pleasure in bulimia, okay? And while it's still serving you, and that's normally to take energy away from something else that may be going on in your life, okay? So it now becomes a bit of a smokescreen, all right? Maybe we shouldn't be talking about bulimia. Maybe we should be talking about a relationship with a mother, a relationship with a child, a relationship with how you see yourself, a relationship with your body, okay? All these things may be part of the real journey that we've got to look at, you know?
I fully agree with that as well. There are times people will go for recovery for bulimia. I've been there. And that is what is spoken to rather than, I don't want to talk about it right now, sort of thing. You go in there and go, I just want to talk about other things that are disturbing me. And,
That's right.
and that's exactly what you're saying, because I'm going to bulimia because I am, what you were saying, screening something. I'm going for comfort where there's discomfort.
Yes.
And a beautiful thing I have to speak to Elizabeth Hall said is you have to learn to be comfortable in your discomfort.
Yes.
In order to move forward, which I think is beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, there's the other thing I was looking at, and this is of interest to me, but where, what do you feel about hobbies and interests? Where I find there are a few people, I won't say everything because I can't generalize on everything, but when you don't have a hobby, an interest, or something that causes that really good feeling, I think it's more difficult.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Yes.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, no. I understand what you're saying, because just translating a bit of what you're saying, to me, you're speaking of identification, all right? Where do I find myself in my life? Okay, so I play the piano, you play the flute. So part of your identity is caught up with the flute. Every time you see a flute, your eyes will light up because you have this history with this 2-foot piece of metal, okay? And it's a beautiful history. And so your whole self will light up. And that's what happens with me and a piano, all right? And so hobbies almost seems like a bit of a demeaning term for what these things actually mean to us, because I know people who are avid readers and they don't just read books. They go on amazing journeys, okay? They experience amazing romances, or they learn about amazing histories, okay? It's a full experience. So any hobby that we have, let's take something like playing cards, all right? There is something about holding cards, playing them, and calculating what you need to calculate that somebody really identifies with, and it speaks about who they actually are. And so part of the trick, in a sense, is to identify not as somebody who's suffering from bulimia, but as somebody who has flute in their life, or books in their life, or card playing in their life, or has relationships with these people. And the more that your mind sees that your identity is caught up with these pursuits, and it does actually reflect you, then bulimia doesn't have to reflect who you are as much. Then it becomes like a ripple in the pond, that with time, that ripple will just get softer and softer and softer, and that one can fade away from your life.
I love that. That is so true. I mean, for me too, along with my flute, was my writing. That was something, and the feeling of completion was just wonderful. And then you can move on to the next one, because that's something that you love to do. There's never a stop to it. You can continue doing it forever. So this is what's so beautiful about it. So
yeah, that's right. And it's amazing. In all of science, we cannot explain why some people love certain things and not others. Okay, so you've been attracted to the flute and to writing, and when people go, oh, why is that? Well, in a way, there's no answer. It's because I love it, or it might be because my grandmother played the flute, or it may be for some other reason. But ultimately, we love what we love, and we are who we are. And part of life is discovering that. And so that's a journey for people out of bulimia, because the pleasure, the absolute pleasure in finding out something that's true in yourself becomes greater than a binge eating pleasure, okay? And we're talking about a lot of pleasure there, all right? Okay, the
True.
pleasure that we get from food, it's a lot of pleasure, all right? So we're actually needing to talk about a lot more pleasure to say, you know what, I don't need that. I can actually move towards something else.
And I know that takes a lot of time to do, because there is something that's set in your mind when you have bulimia, and I know this too, is that number one, it's easy. So,
Yes.
if you just want to just do nothing, and that's the issue, is to trying to change that mindset. But this will make me feel better. However, the thing is, and there's that but word I'm not supposed to use. The it's hard to change that, because it sits there in your mind and it plays on your mind until you go to that food.
Yes.
Which is
Yes.
really
Yes.
annoying. You keep saying, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about it. And the more you say you don't want to think about it, the more it sits there and
Yeah.
just goes at
Yeah.
you.
So I'm going to go into the brain to explain this process, okay?
Yeah.
Because one of the most influential chemicals in our brain is dopamine. And dopamine generates that feeling of pleasure, okay? Now, we don't know how a chemical translates into the feeling of pleasure, but we just know that those two are correlated. And so when you're binging on food, you are releasing a lot of pleasure in your brain, okay? And your brain loves dopamine. So we have to find something else that has more pleasure than that. Now, that's going to be very difficult, all right? But there are a few things that have not only more pleasure, but stimulate a whole lot of other brain chemicals. And I'm talking specifically about oxytocin, right? Which is the wonderful brain chemical that mediates our feelings of love and trust, okay? When you actually get down to trust somebody, that is one of the most wonderful feelings on earth. When you and a therapist work on something and you reach, aha, we've got something here, okay? That was a significant session. That is one of those beautiful experiences in life. And likewise, when you have a beautiful love experience, okay, that all of life feels blissful. And that is all thanks to oxytocin. Now I'm going to go to beta endorphin, which actually gets released in huge amounts when we laugh, but not just in front of a screen, in front of your favorite cartoon or meme, but when you are with somebody or when you're with a group of people and somebody just cracks a really good joke. Sometimes if you don't get the joke, you will just find yourself laughing, because at that moment, you feel like you are part of the human race, okay? And that is a wonderful feeling. And the other one is serotonin, which, yes, I know we have medications that can increase serotonin levels, but where you feel comfortable and at home and you don't have to put on any pretense, where people will just accept you where you are, when you can close the door, take off your jacket, take off your shoes and just lie on the couch, that feels good, okay? So to overcome the pleasure, the dopamine pleasure of a bulimia binge, okay, we want experiences that have oxytocin, because you see, you can't trust a whole packet of cookies. They don't trust you back, all right? Or you can't laugh with a packet of cookies. You'll be laughing by yourself, okay? Or you don't have to be pretentious with a packet of cookies. They don't care if you feel comfortable at home or not. So once we're able to have those brain chemicals fed specifically by other people through good relationships, then that becomes the time when your brain goes, you know what, rather than having a bulimic binge, I'm going to give a call to my sister because she really understands what I'm going through right now. And I want that feeling of understanding again. So that becomes part of the journey as well.
That's really interesting that you say that, because my story is that where my journey of recovery came was when my sister heard me having because I was living with her for a little while. This is a long story about, there was after I lost everything, she brought me in. And she said to me, she goes, I heard you and I worry because I love you. And she goes, just know I'm here.
Yeah.
And I remember one of those points that you were just saying is that when I was in, I called her up and I said, I feel like binging and purging. She goes, that's okay. If you
Yeah.
need to, that's okay. And I always say this, that was like reverse psychology. I go, no, it's not okay. Oh, I'm not going to do it. It's like, I was like, how can you tell me it's okay? But it was the most wonderful thing she could say. And
Yeah.
that's where the other thing I would say with my clients, even if you want to call me and tell me about your binge, tell me about what went on, were you feel anything, weren't you feel anything? Sometimes you don't even know why you're binging. So just to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So in that moment, your sister was being a really good friend to you.
Yeah.
Okay. And look, we live in an age where we're all connected to screens, okay, which means we've got less time to make eye contact with each other as people. So if you have a good friend, if you have somebody who's being a good friend to you, treasure that and take the time to make sure that you can talk to that person when you feel like having a binge,
Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to stop it, but
No.
at least the person's there to speak to about it and they're willing to listen. Because that's a difficult thing for a lot of people close to people with eating disorders, is to have to listen to it, because it's hard, because you love the person and you don't want to hear,
That's
hey,
right.
I'm hurting myself again, or because in a sense we don't like to think of it, but it is hurtful to your body. And
Yes, it is. It is.
so yeah, very interesting. Speaking of cards, though, this is very strange, because when you start to bring it up, very, very odd. I had a dream last night that I said to
Right.
somebody, I'm really bored and I'm really missing playing cards. And then, so you brought that up. I'm going, what? I haven't played cards in years. I don't know why I had that dream. But here we go. It's brought up in this conversation.
Well, it's interesting because I'm wondering, why did I bring that up? Okay. And so I went back to a childhood memory when our neighbors used to invite all the kids over for Saturday nights to play gin rummy until 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And it was just beautiful. It was just fun. And at that time, you just felt that you were part of the human race.
Yeah.
You're part of the human family. And that's that feeling of feeling comfortable with each other.
It's true. Yeah. And your mind goes, it doesn't even focus on anything but that. The other game I love is Scrabble. I really love Scrabble.
Oh yeah.
I love words.
Oh yeah, I play that with my best friend a lot.
Well, this absolutely wonderful. I really appreciate everything that you have to say to us, and I'm sure that there's so many. So, because I mean, you've covered, issues that you've dealt with is anxiety, depression, addictions, personality issues, trauma, relationship breakdowns, all of which are associated to some degree with bulimia, and even the suicide side of it. I know that there have been, but like one of my psychiatrists said, you might have been suicidal had you not had your bulimia. And he's not saying that I would have, but he said it might have saved me from
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yep, yep.
So
Yes, that's right.
so these are
Yes.
all
Yeah.
main components that you work with, which is fantastic. Do you still do music? I want to find out. Are you still playing the piano? And
Yes, I do. I occasionally give concerts, and we have a pod show where I play something every week related to a topic that we're talking about. So let's say we recently did how to be a good friend, and so I played Carole King's "You've Got a Friend," and just things like that, just to tie things together, and music, as you know, is a language that can speak directly to our limbic system without the words. And it's a very complex language, and it does speak, but we can't even find the words to tell us what the music is saying. We just know that it's telling us something vitally important. So yeah, it's been a good friend to me, and I think it's been not just a de-stressor, but music has really kept me sane. It has kept my mind a lot clearer and focused. And the nice thing is that it shares joy with other people. So I would encourage anybody who's looking to move past bulimia to find something that they love like that takes up time and can bring more pleasure than a binge can.
absolutely. And I will just speak quickly to music. I was very careful about the music I listened to, because I know that the hard rock used to get my mind in a bad place. I mean, I know there's people are going to sit there, what? How could you not like that? I like cheerful, upbeat music. It can change me like that. And if you can play me a sad love song and I'll cry on a dime, like it. So I make sure that depending on, my state of mind, right, is what I have to make sure that I stick to the music. Are you playing piano now?
I am.
Oh. That's lovely.
You said about sad love songs. This is a song by Minnie Rippleton, called Loving You. And it's a beautiful song, but it's very sad as well,
This is, again, wonderful. Can you please tell my listeners where they can find you, I believe you said you have a podcast as well?
Yeah. Thank you for that, Lorianne. We have a podcast. We have a YouTube channel. So Dr. Christian Heim. If you type that into YouTube, you'll get our YouTube channel. My partner puts up Instagram quotes almost every day. We're also on LinkedIn, and at the moment we're doing a podcast that's called Late Night Love, because we've just released a book that I've written called The 7 Love Types, How to Navigate Love in a Fractured World, because love is losing its meaning in today's world. So it's actually an overview of the science and the ancient Greek wisdom of what love actually is, as well as how to share it with your family, friends, love partner, and others. So they're the platforms that we're on at the moment.
Perfect. And I will just quickly ask you, so for when your book is available on Amazon?
Yes, it is. It is. It's an ebook, and it's also coming out as an audio book. That should be ready in a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Excellent. And for Instagram, it would be at?
Yes, at Dr. Christian Heim. So Dr. Christian Heim.
Okay. Excellent. And can you I'm going to spell it. So Christian, it's DrChristian.
Correct, yes.
HIM for our listeners. If you have a pen, write that down.
That's right. Thank you very much for that, Lorianne.
Oh, my pleasure. And I really thank you for your time here. And it's been wonderful meeting you. And definitely, I'd love to have you on again.
Look, thank you very much for having me on. Yes, please keep in touch. I'd love to be on again. And what you're doing is wonderful, because you are giving so many listeners hope. You're giving people different pathways that they may choose on their climb up out of bulimia, because you've done it. And that is wonderful.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day. Take care. Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit me at bleepbulimia.com.